Self-inquiry. This process of self-realization was promoted by Maharishi Ramana. This is the most direct method of self-realization. And here there is self-inquiry and its practice by David Frawley. Many different types of meditation are practiced throughout the world. The Vedantic tradition of India has counterparts for most of these, from meditation on deities to that on the various aspects of consciousness. Of these different meditation techniques, self-inquiry, Atam Vichara, a self-introspection approach is generally considered to be the most significant. Self-inquiry is a process of meditation that involves tracing the root of thought to its origin in the heart. It shows us how to take our ego consciousness back to the divine I am at the core of our being, in which all sense of separate self disappears. Self-inquiry is the most important approach of the yoga of knowledge, Jnana Yoga, which is traditionally regarded as the highest of the yogas. According to Maharishi Ramana, mind is temporary, it is non-existent. Ego and mind both are non-existent, they are temporary, and they originate from the self. So this was revealed by Maharishi Ramana. So source of mind and ego is our self, that is our Atma. So what is the basic purpose of self-inquiry? To divert mind and ego to the source, that is the Atma residing in the spiritual heart. So that is the basic function of self-inquiry as given by or revealed by Maharishi Ramana. So David Frawley is giving his ideas about self-inquiry. Self-inquiry is the culminating practice through which self-realization, the realization of our true nature beyond mind and body, can be achieved. It is emphasized in the entire Vedantic tradition since the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita. Many texts of Advaita or non-dualistic Vedanta describe it in detail, particularly the works of Shankaracharya, but also Ashtavakra Sanhita, Avadut Gita, Yoga Vasishtha, and Adhyatma Ramayana. In modern times, self-inquiry is known primarily through Ramana Maharishi, 1879 to 1950, the great sage of South India, who emphasized it as his main teaching. Ramana was a towering figure, a spiritual Hercules, as Sri Aurobindo described him, a sage who achieved self-realization after a mere 20-minute spontaneous meditation when he was but a lad of 16. Historically, self-inquiry has been a common practice among Swamis of the Vedantic orders. There remains a strong self-inquiry tradition in India today, particularly among the Swamis of the South. Through the worldwide popularity of Ramana Maharishi's teachings, people of all backgrounds have begun to attempt this practice. The method of self-inquiry. The process of self-inquiry is so simple that it can be explained in a few words. One traces the root of one's thoughts back to the I thought. This I thought is known as ego, from which all other thoughts arise and diverge. This is initiated by the question, who am I? Or similar question about the one's true identity. This I thought, when we identify ourselves with the body, so this is the I thought, or we name it as ego. So this is a false self. This I is false I. The real I is our Atma. So ego and mind are false I. That is temporary and non-existent. And our real Atma is Sat Chit Ananda. Existence, consciousness and bliss. Sat Chit Ananda. All our thoughts are based directly or indirectly on the thoughts of the self. Our thoughts consist of two components, a subjective factor, I, me or mine, and an objective factor, a state, condition or object with which we are involved. Our own body and mind or external circumstances like our relationships, possessions or activities. We get caught in the object portion and fail to look within to see our true nature apart from these external conditioning influences. The result is that the pure I or I in itself remains unknown to us. All that we call ourselves is but a conglomerate. I am this, or this is mine, with the subject confused with an object. Our self becomes a self-image, a subject in the guise of an object, in which our intrinsic nature is lost along with our dignity as a conscious being. We become a mere name and form a community in the outer world to be used and exploited. Self-inquiry consists of detaching from the object portion to discover the pure subject so that we can become liberated from all external limitations. The truth is that we don't know who we really are. What we call ourselves is only some thought, emotion or sensation that we are temporarily identified with. We are trapped in ideas that we are happy or sad, good or bad, foolish or wise, but do not know the self who experiences these changing qualities. Our lives are shrouded in ignorance about our true nature, starting with our bodily identity. The idea that we are no more than this changing physical vesture. As long as we don't question this process, we must come to sorrow. Self-inquiry and its practice, however, self-inquiry does not mean merely to repeat the question, who am I? See, this who am I should not be used as a mantra. If we use it as a mantra, then the very basic purpose of self-inquiry is simply destroyed. Over and over again in our minds, this becomes an exercise in mental activity that breeds fatigue. It means searching for our true self in all that we do, which is more a matter of observation than analysis. Looking to the self that is behind our various activities of breathing, eating, feeling, thinking and acting. Other questions can be helpful, like what am I, or who is the experiencer, or who is the seer. Any type of self-introspection in which we try to look dispassionately at who we are, and the results of our actions moves us in this direction. Self-inquiry requires that we have a fundamental doubt about who we are that rejects all outer identifications. It is as if one had amnesia and did not know who one was and had to give full attention to the matter before anything else could be done. Self-inquiry is not an intellectual or psychological inquiry, but an inquiry with one's entire energy and attention. It requires a full and one-pointed concentration, not interrupted by the intrusion of other thoughts. True self-inquiry is not just questioning the limitation of our outer identity, like our family, political or religious affiliations, whether one is a wife, a father, a Christian, Hindu or communist. It questions our internal identity as an embodied being and as a mind. It does not stop short with some general identity as a human, cosmic or spiritual being, but rejects any formation of thought. It directs us back to the pure I that has no identity with any form of objectivity, physical or mental, that is in the world but not of it. The true self is only beyond human distinctions. It is beyond all conceivable divisions of time and space, name and form, birth and death. It is beyond all experience as the experiencer or observer of all. The thought current naturally moves back to the self to the extent that we do not preoccupy our minds with outside stimulation. The problem is that the senses present so many distractions that it is difficult to look within. Self-inquiry means to constantly question and try to reverse this process of extraversion, holding our awareness in the heart. Self-inquiry leads us ultimately to the experience of the absolute, in which the phenomenal world becomes little more than a mirage of the mind and senses. It goes far beyond the discovery of some greater self, human or creative potential. It is called the direct way to the absolute. Self-inquiry and other meditational practices. Self-inquiry, it should be noted, is a kind of mental activity, though of a special nature. It is not an attempt to suppress thought or to hold the mind in a blank or empty state, which can be another trap that prevents real transformation. Self-inquiry does not teach that all thought is bad, but in fact that one form of thinking is necessary for liberation. It teaches us to use the mind in the right way, which is to turn it into a tool of inquiry. Self-inquiry requires much thoughtfulness, particularly in discipline, particularly in its preliminary phases, and the development of a strong mental discipline. Unless we have resolved our problems through deep examination, it is useless, not to mention impossible, to stop the mind from thinking. One may ask how self-inquiry, a mental activity, can empty or silence the mind. Does not mental activity increase mental activity? It is not possible for the mind to be empty if its contents have not been released. Mental activity springs from a source, the I thought. We must go to the root of something to change it. This is to return to the I thought in order to go beyond all other thoughts. Holding to the I thought destroys all other thoughts. Hence, self-inquiry is not a kind of passive mindfulness in which we focus on being aware of something like our breath, hands, or an activity that we may be doing. Self-inquiry does not say be aware of your breath, but rather who is breathing or who is really alive. It does not say be mindful of your body, but rather asks, are you the body? Similarly, self-inquiry is not a form of concentration in which we try to concentrate on our object like a mantra to the exclusion of all others. It is concentration on the self where our attention automatically returns whatever else we may try to do. We cannot completely concentrate on anything else unless we first know ourselves. Otherwise, the I thought must arise and break the continuity of our concentration. Rather than fighting the I thought and trying to return to an object of concentration, self inquiry concentrates on the I thought to put an end to other thoughts. Self inquiry is also not an attempt to be good or to make ourselves better. It is questioning the reality of the entity. Who we think is either good or bad can either improve or degenerate. It questions our efforts to be this or that and says that without knowing ourselves, without eliminating the root of the ego, it is of no lasting benefit to try to become anything, however great or noble. Above all, self-inquiry is not an ordinary mental activity, a form of philosophical speculation or psychological analysis. It is not seeking any mental answer or has no conceptual result, while self-inquiry leads to the absolute truth, which can be called the pure I or self. The name is only a pointer. One can call it God, knowledge, enlightenment, Buddha, or whatever one likes, but it is not a state of defined according to an idea or in which mental recognition can occur. Self-inquiry is questioning of the validity of all entities and conclusion created by the mind and conclusions created by the mind. This does not mean that practices like mindfulness, ethical disciplines, mantra, pranayama, or the study of scriptures do not have their place, but that these are supportive to self-inquiry or an alternative line of approach. To follow the ethical discipline, to place the body in a comfortable position, to deepen the breath, to withdraw the mind from sensory stimulation, to develop concentration and other yogic practices should be done, but we should not stop there but proceed to self-inquiry. Only rare individuals can proceed directly to self-inquiry, and even they can benefit by such preliminary practice. Self-inquiry can be done at all times, places, and circumstances. It does not require knowledge of special yoga techniques. It does not require that we otherwise try to overtly change ourselves or what we are doing. It only requires that we place our attention on the source from which thought naturally springs. This, however, is one of the most difficult of all things because it requires control of the wavering and fickle mind. Yet there are several things that can help promote it. Self-inquiry is done most easily where we are sitting alone, particularly in nature. The outer nature is the door to the inner nature. It provides the space and peace that allows the mind to return to its source. In nature, apart from our personal involvements, we can more easily inquire into who we really are, into not only the meaning of human life, but that of cosmic existence. We can practice self-inquiry when we are around other people, but this requires more effort because social contact pulls the mind outward. It is important Therefore, to reduce our outer activities and social context to aid in self enquiry. Generally, in India, self enquiry is not done in a group setting, in a standardized manner or according to a specific course of practice. It is mainly done on an individual basis, though communion between practitioners is encouraged as is specific instruction from the teacher. To practice self-inquiry while we are engaged in action, we can call to mind the inquiry, who is the doer? In this way, we will not let our actions dominate our awareness. This, in fact, gives us better skill in action because it removes any ego distortions from what we are attempting to do. Perhaps the easiest way to approach to self-inquiry is to learn to discriminate between the seer and the seen. First, one discriminates the seer from objects in the external world, like looking at the leaves of a tree blowing in the wind. One holds to the eye as the seer and what the eye sees as the seen, noting that fluctuations in external objects do not cause the eye to change. One's power of seeing remains constant through the various objects seen. Second, one discriminates the seer from the sense organs. In this instance, the mind is the seer and the senses are the seen. There are several senses and each one varies in acuity, but the seer of the senses is constant and not altered by their fluctuations. For example, the seer of the eye is not tarnished by any impairments in the eye like loss of visual acuity. Third, one discriminates between the seer and the mental states. The self is the seer and the mind is the seen. Thoughts and feelings continually change, but their seer, if we look deeply, remains the same. Our seeing as a child and as an adult is the same seeing, not only of external objects but of our internal thoughts and feelings. Fourth, one discriminates between the seer and the ego, between the pure I or higher self and not the lower self, and the I identify with body, emotion or thought. We learn to observe ourselves and our personal limitations as external forms like our house or our car. We see the ego as various mental conditions but not the true self that is beyond the mind. The pure self devoid of and external associations can then shine forth. One then strives to abide in that state of pure awareness. And in this process, one is to negate external objects as not the self or not I. Then one can negate internal thoughts and feelings, including the ego itself. Whatever one can perceive as an object externally or internally is not the self who is the witness of all. Judging one's practice, even a beginner can benefit from the practice of self-inquiry. It is not difficult to begin the process of self-inquiry and experience a shift in our sense of self. Our thoughts begin to subside as we realize that what we have called our self is largely only an identification of the I with some thought or feeling that is external and transient. We see that the more our thoughts deviate from self-awareness, the more confusion and suffering is created. Yet, though this process is not difficult to initiate, it is difficult to sustain. Most of us will discover that we can practice self-inquiry for a time, perhaps extending through several months or years, but that is hard to maintain it as a primary or ongoing practice. It is not a practice like pranayama or mantra that can be done in a routine manner. There is no particular structure or ceremony to it. It is not a step-by-step process with different levels and angles that can be easily mapped out. It remains at the center, but to get to the center and stay there is not that easy. While we make some headway with it, we often reach a barrier that is hard to cross. While it is easy to get rid of superficial identification like those of a political or social nature, it is much more difficult to break our identification with our own body, emotions, and memories. Self-enquiry is also a difficult practice to judge because it has no real stages. One can wonder whether one is making any progress at all, or one can imagine great progress when there is none. The easiest way to determine one's progress is detachment, peace, and equanimity of mind. If one is going deeply into the practice, one will experience a state of samadhi in which one goes beyond body and ego consciousness. The ordinary mind gets dissolved and time and space disappear. Yet, false samadhis can occur, which is why the guidance of a genuine teacher remains important. This, however, is not easy to find. True teachers of self-inquiry are often reclusive and seldom take on many students, usually only those who are ready for intense practice. Those who make a big outer display of being teachers of this direct path and who gather large numbers of people around themselves are often those who failed to finish their practice, which is generally long and arduous. People fail at self-inquiry for two reasons. Either we have not prepared the ground for it properly, or we have not been consistent in our practice. In fact, very few people who begin the practice of self-inquiry continue with it as their primary practice, and most eventually abandon it altogether. While an instant enlightenment path becoming immediately the self of all is an appealing concept that can arouse a temporary enthusiasm. It usually requires lifetime, not merely years of deep practice. Therefore, it is best to approach self-inquiry as a long-term process, not seeking immediate results. One should first aim at a regular practice, for example, half an hour morning and evening after other yogic or meditational practices, to prepare the mind, and continue this for some time before judging the efficacy of what one is doing. In the ultimate truth, the self is the reality, and our inquiry into it and all else that we do is merely a fiction of thought. Yet this fiction of thought is not personal but includes the entire universe. It is the great Maya of the Lord Bhagwan that requires not only our own selfless effort but divine grace in order to cross over it. So this small article is over. Now, mind, ego, self. Just I will take few minutes. Mind is nothing but the continuity of thoughts arising from the self. So, mind is constituted by the thoughts which are arising out of the self, arising out of the Atma. So, there is a basic thought, that is, I am this body. This is known as I thought. This is the basic thought. It is very subtle. It exists continuously, but we are not aware of it. So, this I-ness, we identify ourselves with the body. This is known as I thought. Also, this is known as ego. Now, this ego controls the mind. All activities in our day-to-day life, we are performing with the help of this mind and ego. So, when this mind and ego, they are directed outwardly. That means we are away from the awareness of self. So when mind and ego are directed towards the self, and mind and ego enter the spiritual heart and merge with the self, that is the stage of self-realization. So it is not easy, it is not difficult at all. You should not lose heart, nothing, there is no problem. Simply sit in meditation. First few minutes, start Om Japa for 5 minutes, your mind will subside. Then make affirmations that I am going deeper, deeper, deeper and deeper, still further deeper and deeper to the spiritual heart, and after entering there, merges with the Atma. So definitely within a very short period, you will start the progress. It is not that difficult, don't worry. It is, of course, you have to spare some time. And in the initial stages, as there are vasanas, propensities, subtle impressions in the chitta, that is our subconscious mind. These vasanas have been collecting since ancient times in our different births. So, these vasanas are very, very strong. Our thoughts are created by these vasanas only. So, slowly we will be able to destroy these vasanas, ego and mind, but you have to be patient. You have to believe in yourself. Don't be in a hurry. As you know, hurry spoils curry. So have patience, have belief in yourself. And mind and ego will be weakening day by day, day by day. And who am I should not be used as a mantra. This will initiate your inquiry, then settle, and after some time, you have some affirmations like all negative thoughts, negative vasanas, all the negative energy is going upward in the body, going upward, and through the sahasrara, the topmost point on the head, it is going out. You will realize that your body is becoming light. Then after that, you start have positive affirmations like positive cosmic energy, prana shakti, grace of the liberated souls is entering my body through the Sahasrara and Brahmarendra, going downward through Sahasrara, Agya Chakra, Visuddhi Chakra, Anahat Chakra, Manipur Chakra, Swadhisthana Chakra, and through Mooladhara Chakra. Each and every cell of the body is filled with divine bliss and divine peace. My dear friends, it is not that difficult, don't worry. It is, you can enjoy. This is the method given by our great Maharshi Ramana. His words carries weight. He is the greatest says the God has sent to the earth planet. So, my dear friends, have faith in you, because this mind and ego will not trouble you more for long, because you should know that your soul is omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. And have this think, when others says is could achieve self-realization, Atam Sakshatkara, Brahm Sakshatkara, you can also do. Atma of a sage, Atma of a ordinary person, Atma of a sinner, Atma of a dacoit is same Sat Chit Ananda. So my dear friends, never dishearten by reading this book or that book. Have faith in you and assert yourself that if they could do, I can do equally. Very correct. You must have faith in you. You must have faith in you. That is the most important thing for self-inquiry. So, and always have faith in you. Don't worry that I do not have any Sadguru, Guru. Are Guru, our Atma is the Guru. Our Atma is Guru. And my dear sadhakas, Atma and Paramatma are not different. You have all the qualities of God. Why? Because you have forgotten. You have forgotten your Atma. Atma and God are one and the same. There is no difference in Atma and God. You have faith in yourself. You read the literature of Maharishi Ramana. You read the literature and books by or on Satya Sai Baba, you will find no difference. In this channel, I am simultaneously giving videos on Maharishi Ramana and about his devotees, and other side, Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai Baba and his literature. I am giving videos. My dear friend, you will not find even a single word, sentence or teaching different from each other. All are same. You read the book of Swami Vivekananda, Ramakrishna Paramahansa, Maharishi Ramana, or Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai Baba, you will find no difference, my dear. You will not find any difference. The teachings are, that's why I am giving videos on Maharishi Ramana, Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai Baba, and in due course I will start giving videos on Ramakrishna Paramahansa and Swami Vivekananda. Dear friends, there is no, because truth is one. Truth is absolute. So real sages like Swami Vivekananda, Maharishi Ramana, Paramahansa, Ramakrishna, and Satya Sai Baba, they are the real sages who took birth in holy India. So don't worry, because if you don't have faith in you, then your progress will be hampered. So thank you, my dear friend. Please like, share, and comment, and subscribe my channel, and spread these videos to more and more people so that they can be benefited. Because taking part in the divine work is very, very holy thing. If you are diverting people towards spirituality, that is a very, very holy work. Thank you, my dear friends. Namaskar, namaskar. Thank you.